know, living in Albuquerque, we're blessed with a beautiful landscape. We have the Sandia Mountains that provide a sense of stability for us. We have the Rio Grande that is an oasis in the desert with its beautiful cottonwood bosque. And the desert with its dry air as fine as a rare wine. But we have a fourth element, and that's the aquifer beneath our feet. And it's what I call agua pura. The mountain, the river, and the desert will always be with us. But if we continue using water at the rate we're using it, the aquifer will be greatly diminished.
There's no question in my mind that in terms of long-term issues, water is still our most important problem. It needs to stay on the radar screen if we're going to be successful in addressing it.
I can remember a headline when I was stationed here in 1969 that said something on the order of 36,000 years. We have enough water for 36,000 years right here in Albuquerque, assuming such and such a growth rate. It turns out they were so far off that it was preposterous.
From 1960 to 1992, some areas experienced a decline in water level as much as 160 feet. In fact, in some areas, the water level decline was as much as 40 feet from 1989 to 1992.
We know now that we don't have a sustainable water supply situation. Less than half the water that we pump is being replenished from the river. Previously, we thought that the river would replenish all of our pumping, but that's not the case.
Once we got the statistical data that showed us that we had problems with the aquifer, we stood up to the charge and decided that, yes, we need to conserve water.
Geologists tell us that, on average, the water in our aquifer is 350 years old. We suck it out in just a matter of minutes. About 13 to 15 billion gallons of that water is applied to Albuquerque's landscapes. Sad to say, too much of it winds up here, where it flows into the Rio Grande and out of Albuquerque's water future forever.
Some people say, well, it's all those new industries coming into Albuquerque that are taking all the water. Industrial water use in the city of Albuquerque is only 3% of the total. The ones that are using and wasting water in the city of Albuquerque, frankly, you and I as residential customers. And that's why our efforts, while we certainly focus on industrial use, we're even more concerned about residential use because that's where we can get the most savings.
Residential use is by far our highest billed use. Single family by itself uses about 60% of our water that's billed. Multifamily uses another 11% or so. Commercial uses about 18%. Industrial uses only 3%. And then institutional, which is parks and hospitals and government buildings, use around 9%. In order to encourage citizens to reduce their indoor water use, the city is offering 2 indoor incentives. One is the toilet rebate program, in which we're offering $100 for the first toilet changed out, $75 for the second, and $50 for the third. The second opportunity where we're offering incentives will be the audit retrofit program that will be starting in the middle of the year. In this case, people can call in and ask for a contractor to come into their home. They will look at their last 3 years' water use with them, look at the way they use water in the home and outside the home. They'll look at the irrigation system and the air conditioner also, and then make recommendations on how those people could reduce their use.
I see this is your new 1.6 that you installed yourself.
Right. I'm very happy with it. It works wonderfully, and it does have that extra powerful flush that helps our old sewer lines. So.
You know, 70% of the water use of an average family is done right here in the bathroom. Mm-hmm. And out of that 70%, 40% is done right there in the toilet. So you can imagine the amount of savings that you've gotten by putting in this 1.6 versus a 5 gallon. Tim, another item you might want to go ahead and consider is the aerator on the lavatory. It works the same thing as the kitchen faucet that you have out there, where I had said go ahead and change that out too. You can get a low flow aerator that you might want to change out. It's a very simple matter of just twisting it off, putting some Teflon tape on the new one, put the new one back on. And it's just a matter of we'll save some gallons of water there also.
Okay.
The shower is another large culprit of water use, as you can well imagine.
Right.
They have a lot of new ones out that use very little water. I think they can get down to like 1 gallon per minute. There are shower heads that have a diverter on them too, that you can go ahead and you'll actually push the diverter that will stop the water flow while you're lathering up. You know, one of the statistics that they show is that 1 out of 5 toilets do leak, and it's a tremendous amount of water that is wasted every day. One of the things you might want to try is to go ahead and put some food dye into the toilet tank, and if it is leaking into the bowl itself, then you know you have a problem. Let's head on.
I'm real pleased with the low flow toilet in the other bathroom, and I wanted one installed in this bathroom, but this one seemed like it was going to be more trouble when I first pulled it off.
Yeah, it looks like we might have a problem here.
Okay, what we have here is the flange broke off, so I need to, what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to cut a little bit of the lead to get to the clean part of it, and then I will have to re-weld this flange on the lead here so I can get a watertight seal.
The interesting fact about anything that was produced prior to 1985, 86, somewhere in that area, they used 5 gallons of water per flush. Right. Where we're putting in a 1.6 gallon per flush. The water closets, when they first came out, had a very bad reputation about no flush. You'll find that in the new fixtures that are out, you don't run into the problem.
Okay, Tim, I'm done installing the toilet. Let's check it one more time so we could see how it works. Looks good, no leaks.
That's great. I appreciate you helping me out like that with the flange and everything.
You have 2 toilets. You installed one yourself. I installed this one here. On the first toilet, you get a $100 rebate.
Right.
On the second toilet, you get $75. It gives you a total of a $175 rebate on your water bill, so that way you got some credit there. I'll go ahead and sign this and the date it. And this is yours.
Okay.
And you need to mail that into the city.
Thank you.
The Chavez household a year ago was one of the worst water users in the city of Albuquerque. Margaret and I invited the water conservation team from the city of Albuquerque to do a water audit on our home, which is available to all Albuquerqueans now. They pointed out areas that we could do better. Today, we use less than the average residential customer.
Hello, Jackie. I'm Curtis Smith with the Xeriscape Council, and we're here to completely change out your landscape to a xeriscape. And you said that there's a yucca that died here last year.
Yeah, one died, and then this one I think is following it to the grave.
It has the agave weevil. Part of the problem is that it's here in a bluegrass lawn area, and it's just getting too much water.
I have to water it quite a bit, especially like in July and August when it gets warm. I probably water twice a day for 20 minutes at a time, and my water bill is probably over $100, so anything I could do to reduce my water bill would be a great help, and I think that by taking the grass out, that would be a great start.
Changing to a xeriscape ought to reduce your water use considerably. One of the principles of xeriscape is planning and design. It's important to do the job right in the planning and design phase. So I'd like to introduce you to George Radnovich. He is a professional landscape architect here in Albuquerque.
Hi, Jackie.
Hi, George. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. From your front corner over here, we should be using gravel here to mulch under plants. We may have a little bit of gravel in this landscape when we're done designing it. There's a lot of pollen dust in it. Purple plums are really not a very appropriate plant for a xeriscape, which is why we shouldn't be using them here. I think the next step is to actually do the design. If you over here, I use kind of penstemon, the red penstemon, everything.
We take water for granted. It's at our fingertips. Perhaps we have to go back and talk to some of the old people who worked the acequias to irrigate their fields, to realize how precious a commodity water really is. If the acequia ran dry for them, life was difficult.
The weather will substantially affect how successful we are in any given month or year. 1995 was a good example. We had less than 6 inches of rain. The normal is up around 9, and that was primarily because we missed our monsoon season late in the year. And so people watered a lot more.
Our cycle of wet and dry here in New Mexico is connected to the El Nino cycle. That's a current in the Pacific that at times allows warm water to build up along the west coast of North and South America. That's an El Nino event, and that allows a lot of moisture to start flowing into New Mexico, especially in the winter and spring months. Periodically, though, it switches to a La Nina, or the girl child, which allows a lot of cold water to build up instead of the warm water. And we have just the opposite effect. We don't get a lot of moisture coming in here, and we have dry years. That's where we're in right now.
So far this year, we've had about 1.5 inches. And that's what, 3 full months. We're at least an inch below normal. And when normal is only 2.5 inches and you're an inch below, you're like, you know, only 60% of normal or something like that. So that's a lot for us.
So you're going to end up with a lot of dry years in New Mexico. So I think water conservation is probably one of those things that you just have to do, whether it's a wet year or a dry year.
There's a big word, evapotranspiration. It means two things. Whenever water is in a lake or in a river or a stream or a pond or lying in your garage, it evaporates. That happens all the time. The next thing is a plant. We as human beings, we breathe air. A plant breathes water. It needs water to assimilate the nutrients in the roots, goes up to the plant, holds it stiff so it doesn't lean over, and it also breathes through the leaves of the plant to keep the plant cool. For example, we have 8 inches of rain coming down. But when you measure it over a period of a year in Albuquerque, 31 inches goes up in the air. That's evapotranspiration, which means you must replace the difference, which is about 23 inches.
Where's it come from? The aquifer. We pump it up out of the ground, we spray it all over everything with our sprinklers, and then it evaporates into the sky.
I still have grass, and I have a dog, and the dog and the grass don't get along, and I'm not sure what I'm going to do about that. But I really need to consider xeriscaping.
Now, I don't know if Bill Eisenhood in his little yard is creating that much of a problem, but when you put 50,000 Bill Eisenhoods in 50,000 yards, then you do have a problem.
People who come here from wetter climates, which is almost everything east of here, have to be aware that they need to adjust. Not only attitudes about using water, but to begin to appreciate a different kind of beauty.
I just want to double check with you and make sure which plantings are supposed to be taken out this morning. I was told that we're going to take your photinia out here, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, also the palm yucca over here, as well as these plantings along the road, including the juniper. On this side of the yard, we're going to take out the euonymus and the arborvitae and the gravel, is that correct?
Yes, that's right.
We will be leaving the pinon here, as well as the smaller yucca and the boulders that we can integrate into the landscape later. Of course, we'll also be taking out this high water bluegrass for you this morning. Right here, Jackie, is a typical example of what we want to avoid. Around the corner up here, you can see somebody has their irrigation system on, and all this excess water is running to the street. This is one thing that we try to stress with our xeriscape concepts, is we want to eliminate water waste like this.
On a typical day, I'll probably visit and document 20 different places. And out of those 20 visits, I'll probably issue 3 or 4 warning letters as first-time contacts, and about usually 4 to 5 actual violations. If you're in violation of the water ordinance, the first fee that will be assessed to your water bill is $20. The second fee is $50. Third, fourth, and fifth fee are $100. Sixth, seventh, and eighth are $200. And on the 8th violation, the ordinance allows for the city to place a flow restrictor device that will essentially restrict your water use for sanitary purposes only, no irrigation. Almost every house in the subdivision has the same problem, and mainly it's because they've never changed their timers from the setting that the developer put them on. This is a great example of how the new ordinance affects the landscaping, new construction. As you can see, there looks to be about 20% high water use landscaping and 80% low or no water use with the gravel. I think people realize that they've moved to a desert, but I think they have the desire to create the appearance they had wherever they came from.
Bob, I see that most of the landscape irrigation has been put in. It looks real nice here. There was grass here last time I was here. Now there's some trenches and there's some piping. What's going in here?
This is going to become a drip system. Part of the system that you saw running for the grass is now going to be a drip system for the shrubs and trees. If you look around the landscape here, you see some yellow flags, and that's where the old heads were. And that's all one zone now, strictly for the shrubs and trees. Also, as you look around on the inner portion of the yard, you'll see some white flags, and that's the new zone that we put in so we can water the perennials different than the shrubs and trees.
This yard's probably pretty representative of most yards in the Albuquerque area. About 90% of the yard is covered with bluegrass, turf, and about 10% of it is covered with flower and shrub beds. If this is an average Albuquerque home, from 40 to 45% of the water used in 1 year will probably go on to the landscape at the home. That's a lot of water, somewhere between 80 and 90,000 gallons every year. You can reduce your water use and maintain a landscape like this by knowing a little bit more about it. This yard will probably take about 40 inches of water to maintain it, but in many cases we're finding that people are using from 3 and as much as 5 times that amount of water to maintain a turf grass lawn. I just want to show you a couple of the things that I found wrong with the system that can be corrected. Really, it's a pretty good system. We haven't done the catch can test yet, but I think we're going to have pretty good coverage. Starting right in here, you might notice the sidewalk is getting sprayed an awful lot. Usually that's because either sometimes you can have grit in the nozzle that deflects the spray back, but a lot of times the sprinkler heads are not vertical. When they're leaning, they don't spray the pattern they were intended to spray. We can usually just by putting some backfill in there and putting a flexible riser, get it back up to vertical and keep most of the water on the lawn.
Good.
Rather than out on the sidewalk where it flows into the street. Here I want to unscrew this nozzle and replace it probably with a 1/4 circle nozzle,
okay,
or maybe a 1/3 circle nozzle that can go from there and across the flower bed a little bit and try and keep more of the water on the landscape. That very tall pop-up in the center over here has a leaky seal, and sometimes grit gets in there. It can be flushed on most sprinklers, but you should check with the manufacturer by carefully stepping down on the stem while it's in operation, and that allows the grit to be flushed out of the wiper seal. We don't want to see any gaps or any heavy spots in that spray. Slopes are not good for irrigation efficiency. They look great, but you always wind up with dry spots on the top and a lot of the water running down onto the lower areas, so they're difficult to irrigate. We need to put the water on in small shots, short bursts, and allow the soil to absorb it and rest, and then put on another burst until we fulfill the water requirement for the grass. Why don't we go ahead and do our catch can test? So you take 3 cans, I'll take 3 cans. We'll just kind of randomly set them out on the lawn to represent the general precipitation rate for the entire area. Last one. Now we have 6 cans that collected water for 10 minutes each. This will give us 60 minutes worth of water. It's about 1.5 inches, Beth.
So that's about how much water ends up on my lawn after an hour of watering.
Right, so we have 1.5 inches per hour, and that's about normal for a system like this.
Good.
I remember when I first moved here, green was a big deal. And there's green here, but it's a lot more subtle. There's a different color palette here that I think people moving from a wetter climate need to start appreciating more.
Off this corner, Dad, see the corner right here of the sidewalk? Yeah, and they're actually down here now.
This one flowing off into the street and then channel around in this direction. So I would go like this. Desert willow is one of the small trees being used in this landscape. It's very drought tolerant, grows to about 20 feet tall, provides light shade and beautiful pink flowers that attract hummingbirds all summer. One of the miracles of this garden is going to be the giant 4 o'clock. From this very unpromising beginning, a plant will grow that will be a foot tall and at least 4 feet across, flowering all summer with beautiful dark magenta blooms that attract both hummingbirds and hawk moths. Pine leaf penstemon is one of the small flowering plants used here. It will get about 8 inches tall, a foot across, evergreen foliage with short spikes of scarlet flowers starting heavily in May and then continuing lightly through September. This is dwarf butterfly bush. It has purple flower spikes through the summer, starting early summer and continuing through frost. It attracts butterflies like a magnet and will get about 5 feet tall and 4 feet wide if it's watered deeply every 2 weeks during the summer. This small plant will develop into a red yucca that is about 2 feet tall and 4 feet wide as it matures. Threadgrass is a small ornamental grass being used along the dry stream bed. It will grow about 18 inches tall and form clumps about a foot across. The interesting thing about this plant is both its soft texture and the fact that through the growing season it progresses from darker green to a soft blonde color.
Here at Mission Linen, we have over 80 employees, and last year we washed almost 7 million pounds of laundry, and we saved over 2 million gallons of water. And the year before that, we saved over 1 million. How did we do that? We installed a water reuse system. Another way we saved was we lowered the water level within the washer itself. And it did not change anything. It did not change the wash cycle at all. It just saved us water.
At Philips Semiconductors, we employ approximately 1,500 people engaged in the manufacture of integrated circuits for use in automobiles, communication, disk drives, and other computer applications. Over the last year, we have succeeded in reducing our usage by 5 million gallons a year using recycled water for landscaping and for some other small changes that we've made, including changes the fixtures in the toilets to low flow and the faucet systems. Over the next year and a half, our intent is to reduce our water consumption by another 95 million gallons a year, which our total goal is 100 million gallons below where we were in 1994.
As we traveled around the city in the early stages of this program, I heard people say or ask the questions, City of Albuquerque, what are you going to do about your water waste? We're standing at the city's wastewater treatment plant located on South 2nd Street. One of the exciting things the city is doing here is recycling some of the effluent to use for domestic purposes, to do our irrigation with, also to use it as wash down for the various processes that goes on here.
Prior to 1985, very few of our park locations were metered. We were basically watering by the seat of our pants. Since then, we've put in an all-out effort to try to meter as many locations as we possibly can. The city's very serious about meeting these goals of 40 inches this year and 35 inches by the year 2000. If we exceed those goals, we'll get charged a surcharge. Since the metering began, we've saved several billion gallons of water.
In the older days, we had a dump and fill system with our sea line pool, and that pool contained approximately 6,000 gallons. So we would dump 6,000 gallons on the average every day. So that's approximately 2 million gallons a year of water going down the sewer system. This system that you see behind us is a recirculated system, and it's filtered through sand filters, and so very little of the water is wasted through the sewer system. It's all recirculated.
The Albuquerque Aquarium, which will be opening this fall, will have about 500,000 gallons of exhibit water. This will be circulated throughout 20 different exhibits. Each tank has its own special set of pumps and filters so that all the water in there will be recycled continuously.
Well, Jackie, what do you think of your new xeriscape?
Well, I love it so far. I can hardly wait for the plants to grow up.
Right now you see a lot of gravel here, which is the mulch, but it's mulching plants. They're going to grow, and pretty soon the gravel will be covered by plant material.
I've had 3 of my neighbors stop by already and tell me they're going to take out their grass.
The plan very wisely includes water harvesting by collecting water off the roof, directing it into the swale here, where it can be used to water the plants. And that's very important in an area like this, which receives only 8 to 10 inches of precipitation in a good year. If you'll remember what was here, we had a lot of plants that were native to the Midwest, other parts of the country, and even the Orient, plants that needed a lot of water. Now what we've got are plants that are well adapted to this kind of climate and to much lower water use. You've got a timer that's going to take care of turning the water on for you. You'll just need to make sure everything's working right, and when the seasons change, come out and change your timer.
I'm glad I don't have to water so much, but it's not only watering, it's mowing and fertilizing and all those other things, so I'm looking forward to the free time.
We have a lot further to go to realize our goals. But I can't help but be pleased. This is the first time the city has undertaken an initiative of this magnitude, of this nature. We're still, the numbers are going down in terms of how much water we're using, and that's encouraging. We're starting to see some of the areas where we need to focus a little more heavily, and it's a learn-as-you-go process, but we're learning.
We need to reduce our community use of water by 7.5 gallons per person per day. The City Council has said we need to achieve that over 10 years. That's 7.5 gallons per person, per day, per year reduction. So if everybody will just do what they need to do this year and for the next few to save 7.5 gallons of water every day, we will reach our goal.
We've got a real big challenge ahead of us. Every one of us has to be a part of the solution, and we've got to do it for our children.
If we're going to assure that future generations have this agua pura from the aquifer to use, we have to make a personal commitment to use it wisely every single day for years to come.
For a free copy of this program, call the City of Albuquerque Water Conservation Office at 768-2562. For information about the city's toilet rebate program, Operation Low Flow, call 768-3655.